needs you.
Doesn't need you.
Do you bleed?
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Justice League without question is one of the most disgusting and appalling movies that I've ever watched. The way they disrespected their fans by releasing that abomination back in 2017 just goes to show how little studios care about their fans, filmmakers, and even the actors involved in the film. As most of us know, Joss Whedon came into the picture to take over the production of that film when Zack Snyder stepped out to deal with some family issues. But when fans came to know this, most of us wanted Zack Snyder's original vision of the film to be released and not even knowing if it will be any better, but to perhaps get some sort of compensation for Joss Whedon's disaster. And 4 years later, here we are with a 4-hour cut of Justice League. Yes, it's better for sure, but I wouldn't get your hopes up and think this goes from an F movie all the way to an A+. Let's quickly talk about the story. It's definitely more coherent. It doesn't feel choppy. You know what's going on, and what I really enjoy is that each scene in the film is allowed to be played out. There's no need to chop it down and make it feel awkward like how it did in the original. We understand more about how this film is connected with Batman v Superman with the introduction of Darkseid. Now, he's not involved in the film at all, as they might be saving him for the next one, if that's even happening. But at least this time we sort of understand Steppenwolf's purpose. He essentially betrayed Darkseid, and to win him back, he's attempting to conquer the one planet that Darkseid failed to conquer. So Steppenwolf is basically simping for Darkseid in an attempt to get some form of validation, right? Oh, also Steppenwolf is shiny in this film, like really shiny, so I guess that's the improvement that we needed from the original. And speaking of characters, Cyborg is an actual character this time. That's right, he's actually more fleshed out and at times feels like one of the more focused characters of the film. Very surprising. We learn so much more about his relationship with his father, a little bit about his backstory, and even his mother. There was one really good scene where Cyborg is monitoring this random stranger who's struggling financially, and this is one of those scenes where he's sort of figuring out his powers, and there's something so good about how that scene was played out, and just give me more of that. That really helps the audience latch on to this character. Thankfully also, all the cringy jokes from the original has been removed and the humor is kept to a minimum, and I enjoyed that. I don't know why people want DC to be Marvel so bad. Just let DC be DC and let Marvel be the fun ones. I know DC can be very bleak and depressing at times, but personally I do enjoy how these movies take themselves more seriously, unlike Marvel that can take it a bit too far sometimes with the jokes, even in serious situations. And as I was mentioning about the characters, Batman, he's kind of the same from the original. Superman, and Wonder Woman, she's fine, she has a screen presence, but whenever she starts talking, the line delivery is so bad. So essentially, it is a better movie in a lot of ways, but unfortunately, there's a lot to hate as well. First off, it can feel boring at times, and not because it's a 4-hour movie, because I had no problems watching the Lord of the Rings extended cut in one sitting. The story just isn't engaging enough, not like what we got in Avengers. That's because they did years of setup to build up, the excitement. They had a plan, they knew the end game of their final phase, no pun intended. And yes, I do understand Zack had his own vision of how to build up his story, but the fact that we never got a solo movie for characters like The Flash or Cyborg beforehand to build them up feels like DC just wanting to play catch up with Marvel. And yes, there is some characterization, as I mentioned earlier on, but it's not enough for the audiences to get excited and cheer any of these heroes. And let's be honest, this film did not need to be 4 hours. There were certain scenes that could have been cut out, but I'm not really complaining since this was released on a streaming site. But there's no need to bloat up your film just because you can. For example, that scene with the Flash and Iris felt a bit awkward with the music. And speaking of the music, I don't know what that audio mix was, but the movie sounded terrible compared to Batman v Superman, which had an A+ score. This film, it feels so awkward and weird, and they had this new score for Wonder Woman that it just didn't work. Like, something was up with the score in this film and it felt so awkward. The worst thing about this film is the visuals. These are some of the ugliest visuals I have ever seen. 70% of the movie feels like you're watching a cartoon. It is absolutely disgusting to look at. The usage of green screen feels like something from the 80s. There is so much ugly green screen and CGI that when they actually use a real location, you kind of have this sigh of relief because finally it's watchable. The CGI is a joke. There's this one scene where Batman and the Flash are in an actual Mercedes. Yes, they got an actual car, and then 2 seconds later they CGI'd the car to drive up some highway. What? Why would you CGI the car when you already have it? What the hell is going on here? There are so many action scenes that look terrible to the point I just laughed at how bad it is. Another thing that I absolutely hate about this film is that half the movie is in slow motion. Alright, fine, if you want to use it for the scenes with the Flash, that's understandable, but every 5 minutes there's a goddamn slow motion scene. I kid you not, if it wasn't for the slow motion scenes, we could have saved at least 20 minutes of the movie. It's so cringe to look at because now you get to see the shitty CGI at 240 frames per second. Yeah, congratulations, that's what we came here for. So what else is terrible about Justice League? Lois Lane, she has no purpose. She just shows up in every other scene to cry about Superman, but apparently she's the key, so yeah, she's here to stay. The similar problem of the third act is still here. When Superman shows up, there's no tension. He's just too overpowered for Steppenwolf. It's just way too easy. In Batman v Superman, at least there was the kryptonite that kept the audiences aware that Superman can be vulnerable. There was even Doomsday, as terrible as he was, there was still a sense of danger. But in this film, it's just too easy. Once again, I just didn't care about the ending. Yes, the story and the characters are more fleshed out this time, but this isn't a film I would want to watch again. It's just like Batman v Superman. The theatrical cut was terrible, but the extended cut that was released to DVD and Blu-rays, yes, it was a better film, but it's just a longer story to flesh out a little bit more, on the characters and the story itself. But it did not fix the core story and how terrible it was. And this is exactly how I feel in Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is not a movie that I would want to watch again. Despite how mixed this film is, I'm really glad that this was released. Yes, I know I sound like such a hater, but I think this is an absolute win not only for filmmakers but for the fans. We asked for it and we got it. I think this is a step in the right direction because studios are starting to realize that the most important thing is to satisfy their fans and not the corporate cucks. If a film is tailor-made to the fans' needs, of course we're gonna pay to watch it. So studios really need to stop with the political crap and virtue signaling in films. Talking about you, Netflix, just to satisfy some dumbasses on Twitter, and just focus on making an actual good movie. I think that's about it. Thank you for watching.
The Kryptonian ship has an amniotic chamber, which would be a perfect...
No.
Is it a risk? Yes, but it's necessary.
Why? Because of your guilt?
Kal-El, no!